January is our Back to Basics month, so we're going to do the first 4 chapters in the Science of Mind textbook, the introduction, first 4 chapters. And today it's the thing itself. One of the hard things about doing this is not running them all together. That's what I always want to do all 4 of them in one talk. So keeping it isolated to each particular part sometimes is a little bit of a challenge for me. And it's a good challenge. It's nice to be able to really stop and look at things a little bit more deeply. And from the Science of Mind, it's part of the chapter 1, the thing itself. Whatever the nature of any principle may be, insofar as it is understood by anyone, it may be understood by all. The promise of that is that we can understand, that we can really understand the process that's going on around us. And if you look back through history in religion and philosophy, it's been man's search for what in the world is going on. If you read the Old Testament, if you read any up to through authors of today, most people are still wanting to understand what in the world is really going on. Of course, that's one of the things when I get to religious science, I feel like is answered very well. And we talked about earlier, though, every time I come through this again, another layer is pulled back for me, and I gain a little more understanding. That's why it's so helpful to go back through this process over and over. And it's really important to start with this particular subject. The great mystery is, what is this thing we call God? That is the greatest mystery of all time, and it's still the great mystery today. It's some of the veil of it, even through science, is being peeled back a little bit. I watch the Science Channel a lot, and when we went through this before, I watched some other videos, and I've read some books too. There's a physics class you take now if you're in ministerial school, and I wish I could remember the guy's name. He's Indian. He wrote a great book about the physics of God. And what he encounters in that, he goes back to Hinduism, which is his basic understanding, I get lost. I just, bless my little heart, I just get lost in Hinduism. It's something I really have a hard time following. So maybe it's the names and stuff. I just really get kind of lost. But he got into that. But what he talked about a whole lot is scientists are learning today that there's so much more than they understand. I mean, they knew that they didn't understand, but then they find that they understand even less than they thought, because they are seeing that consciousness breaks across barriers they didn't understand would happen. They're beginning. The great thing of science is their instrumentation gets finer and finer and more sensitive, and they can measure more and measure more as time goes by. They measure the consciousness of the whole world on a regular basis. And I don't understand exactly how they do this, but they've got computers around the world, and they're random number generators. And they watch the change in the random numberness, because a genuine random number generator is 50-50, 0 and 1. It's absolutely 50-50 over time. And they find that by watching that, it's not always that way. It will shift one way or the other. And right before 9/11, there was a big spike in it not being random anymore, right before it happened. And they watch this. They have, I don't know how many computers around the world that are set up just to do this one thing. And they're watching that before big events happen in our whole society, the worldwide events, there's changes in the randomness of it. It ceases to be as random as it ought to be. And they're going, what's that? Well, what it is, race consciousness around us is always there, and it is always being influenced by all the thinking in and out of that we all do. So they're measuring that. They're measuring all kinds of things. And they're seeing that it isn't as simple as they thought it was going to be. That consciousness really does affect things. A long time ago, it was back in which I remember my science a little bit better, but they were doing wave with light particles. They were doing wave experiments, and when they would set up to watch it closely, it would change what it would do. And they go, oh my God, what's that? You know, the observer effect, you know, which is well documented, but not also really totally understood. But the understanding behind it is our consciousness plays a bigger role than we know, which is really next week's talk. But it is science in, you know, our first reading, our affirmation. Science and religion are beginning to meld closer and closer and closer. And that will continue. That process will continue. Not without a lot of consternation on a lot of scientists' part, because that's difficult for them to understand that it's not all empirical. The data is so much more than that, and that's difficult for them. But it's a place we need to start as individuals too. The biggest thing we need to know when we start our search and our journey, which actually began before you found this. Mine began before I found religious science too. And I didn't have it down really very well. My understanding of God, or the nature of the universe, our laws, our principles, however you want to refer to them as, I had a real poor understanding of the whole process. It was handed down to me by my culture, my family, all the people around me, the religions I was involved in at the time, gave me a very poor understanding of the nature of reality. And if y'all help me, which philosopher said, in a cave, the figures on the wall is what we see, but the reality projecting is Socrates or Plato? And I don't remember. But anyway, he said, the life we see is the shadows on the cave wall. What we do not see is the reality that is generating those. We do not see that. And that was some 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Because man has been searching for what is really going on. And it is complicated because earlier man, and of course we got a nice dose of it this week with our ice storm and all the things that happened around us. You know, why do these things happen? You know, because one of the big things that always happens that we always see is, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do bad things happen to good people? And that's a big question, and it's an ancient question. So it's important that we get back to what's really going on around it, and it starts with the thing itself, which we call God. We call it the universal creativity. We call it lots of different things. But what is it? Well, it'll be more than we can really ever peel back. But we can get a feeling for what it is. And it's an important place to start, because everything else will be in reference to that. It was before you came here. Your life was in reference to what you understood about God. And if you were like me and had a real poor understanding about it, a lot of things just didn't make sense to me. You know, the big question, why do bad things happen to good people? Or why do good things happen to bad people? The other side of that same question. And religion is always trying to answer that. It always has been, and it always will be. Of course, I think I know the answer to that one now, which helped a whole lot. Well, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. It really just does that sort of thing. And we talked about that last spring quite a bit too. You know, it's just the nature of reality is the rain falls, and where you happen to be, you know, if you were unlucky enough to be under some of those limbs that fell this week, it could have really hurt you. Some big limbs fell. There was a huge tree in Odessa. They had a picture of it before it fell. It was one of those trees that came up about 5 or 6 or 7 feet high, and then 3 huge limbs came out, and it had enough weight, it cracked right down the middle, and the 3 huge sections fell different directions. And it was costing the guy several $1,000s to get it all cleaned up out of his yard. The tree was so big it fell in his neighbor's yard, it fell out into the street. You know, this huge tree. Well, that's just the physics of the process, enough weight finally got on that tree that the fibers of the wood could no longer support it, and it gave way to that. That's what was happening all around town. It's just the physical nature of that. I noticed that mostly more live oak trees had lots of limbs missing. Of course, almost all trees had limbs missing, except Taffy and I. We have a fruitless mulberry in our trees, and we didn't lose any limbs out of those. I lost a little bitty limb out of an oak tree. So we were really kind of fortunate to that. So the nature, the specific design of each tree made it more vulnerable or less vulnerable to the weight of the ice. And our fruitless mulberries really come out real well from that. But poor live oak trees, because of the nature of the way they're made and the weight of them, they're more brittle. So, because it's a harder wood, so it snapped. So there was lots and lots of live oak tree limbs down. And they weren't alone, but they were a big part of what's going on. That is just the law of the way they are made. So what's going on is really what we talked about in the beginning, love and law. It is the physical laws of the universe are set in a certain way, and things happen in a certain way all the time. You can kind of count on it. When it gets to be 32 degrees, water starts to change, and as the temperature continues to drop, it changes from a liquid to a solid. You stick that same ice on the stove in a pot, and you turn the heat up, it will become a vapor after a while. Those are natural laws of our universe, and they'll work anywhere you are. And that's just the way it is. One of the wonderful things of that is it means you can count on it. When you learn the laws of the universe, you know what you can count on. When it's raining and it gets cold, you're going to have ice. This is the way it is. And if it piles up on the trees, some of the trees are going to break according to their nature too, according to the way that they are designed. And the law stays steady. And that's really a good thing. It's a hard thing when the trees break and some really pretty trees are destroyed, but it is the nature of things. It is the nature of the thing, of God. There is this absolute certainty of those basic principles. Then let's go back to the love part of the law. The love part of the thing itself. That is the givingness of the creative source so that we have life, so that we have everything around us. But when we arrive here without good knowledge, it's confusing. It is so confusing. And then if we're confused about that, then we are also confused about our lives, and we're confused about our place in society, our place in the world itself. Without having some certainties, how do you have firm footing to live your life? That's why we need to always begin at this place, the thing itself, understanding the nature of our universe, understanding the givingness of life to our world. The understanding of givingness to us. I got another quote, I think. Yeah. Well, it's, Did my battery run down? You want? Well, that's too many. We're both doing it, maybe. So where do we start? Then we start at the beginning. And the beginning is the understanding of the thing itself, God, the universal creativity. Because we got to know our place in the world. To function healthy, in a healthy manner, we've got to know who we are. And we are the source of the one. We are the creation of the one. So we can find in ourselves the same thing. We work in very specific ways, and you can really count on that. And we are as creative as the Creator that made us. And we are supposed to be creative. We're supposed to use all the facilities that are given to us. And when we look back towards the one again, to the thing itself, what we see is love and peace and harmony and abundance and joy and abundance. If you look at nature, Abundance is everywhere. You plant one seed, and how many fruits come from the one seed? There's just that enormous abundance out there. And the same in us. It is the same in us. We have the ability to be as creative as the one. So creativity is the essence of the one. The givingness, that's love. Love is always giving of itself so that there is more out there. So there is that abundance. So the nature of that, our place in it is to be the creative people of this dimension. God seems to live outside the dimension we find ourselves in. And maybe science someday will figure that part out, I don't know. It confuses me when they talk about more dimensions than we're aware of. And then they search out that so thoroughly. But God lives beyond the third dimension that we live in. We are God's representatives here. That's the truth of the thing, is it lives through us. And we'll talk about that a lot more next week too, as that process helps. But we know that it's God's pleasure, appears to be God's pleasure, if God has pleasure, that we live very abundant lives. That we are in an abundant world and we live very abundant lives. So the truth is, we are given everything we need through that source flowing through us. So that's our understanding of this process, love and law. Love the givingness, law the order that we find everything in, so that you know how the givingness is going to come to us. That's the important thing to know. We know and trust in the givingness of the universe around us. And we know through its laws that certain things happen in certain situations. And by having that foundation, we can come more to know ourselves and our place in the universe. So God is this huge creation. Maybe it was started at the Big Bang. Maybe that was God's hiccup. I don't know. But I do know that through that process, even though it was 15 billion years ago, scientists think, that we're here. We get to be here and play in this wonderful, wonderful world that has law and order, that has love and givingness, that has everything that you need for the most creative life possible. So the basics of it is love and law, order and givingness and creation. So the thing itself is that. It is all of that, and it's more than we will probably ever discover. But it will always be the foundation that we build everything upon. So the better we get a grasp on the foundation of life, then the better we know where we fit in. The better we know who we are. The better we know what we can do. So let's always keep our foundation on the love and the law. God gives to us completely. There's nothing between us and God, nothing to hold back from this wonderful gift of the universe flowing through us. This life we didn't create, this life we didn't even ask for. But then we know the order that it stands upon too. So we have this wonderful trusting, this wonderful knowing of life itself. So we get to build our whole month on that wonderful foundation of God loves you more than you can imagine. Because God gives you more than you can imagine. It's there for free. We don't have to do anything for it. That was one of the big mistakes I had early in life, was I had to do something to appease God. I had to find some ritual. I had to find the special saying. I had to act in a certain way. I had to belong to a certain group. I had to do something that I didn't totally understand to make God love me. Because I was told God didn't. I was told I was sinful and I was lost, and there was nothing I could do about it on my own. And that's, to me, a very mistaken philosophy. And it's a philosophy that leads to us feeling like slaves, us feeling lost, us feeling less than. And that's not the truth. The truth is the givingness is always coming whether you deserve it or not. Because you do deserve it. But you don't ever get beyond that wonderful flowing of life to you. There's nothing special you have to say. There's no special group you have to belong to. And that's the wonderful thing to know. And to know that the order of the universe will be there to support you all the time with all that wonderful life flowing to you. So that's the thing itself. The thing itself is life. The thing itself is creativity. And you are that too right now. Shall we take that into prayer? And Pamela is still not doing well, so we're going to do a treatment for Pamela this morning. And I do know the truth. I do know the truth of the One. I do know the truth of creativity. I do know the truth of the love of God, that flowingness out of life, ever flowing to us, the source of who we are. It is the heart beating in your chest. It is the blood flowing through your veins. It's the air that you're breathing. All of that is the creativeness of God flowing to you, coming out as you. And we are the same as that one creation because God made us. And God made Pamela too. And we are, and Pamela is love and peace and harmony and abundance and joy. And Pamela's asked for treatment, and Pamela's asked for treatment is divine right order. So I speak my word for you and for myself and for Pamela right now, knowing that divine right order flows through each one of us and Pamela right now. That divine right order is love and peace and harmony, and it's the law. It's the law of our biological selves. And we know that we are so blessed to be supported that way. This biological life is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful life to be involved in, to be expressed in. And we are so grateful for that. And we're so grateful for Pamela's life too. And we know that occasionally I get in my own way and I block that love and that creativity from flowing to myself. So I release all of those negative thoughts I have, because they're the blocks. I release them for myself, and I encourage you to release them for you. And together we release them for Pamela. And we know the love and peace and harmony of the universe is flowing through each one of us and Pamela right now. That it expresses itself in our most wonderful biological ways. And for this we're so very grateful. We're so very grateful for our opportunities to live this life. We're so very grateful for our friends to also live this wonderful life alongside us. Because this is the creative story as we do it all together. And we are so grateful for Pamela's life too. And we hold that very dear for just a moment. And then we take all the words and thoughts and feelings of this treatment and we release them to the law, that doing part of God, that doing it does so efficiently and so quickly at just the request that we make. We know that in that request it is also now done. Whole, perfect, and complete. And we release all that, and shall we anchor it together and say, and so it is.